Good afternoon, Bruins. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Andrew Bottom. I am your Associate Director for the Global Internship Program here on UCLA campus, and I'm very excited to be talking to you a little bit about our global health programs in Oaxaca, Mexico, and La Paz, Bolivia. I am here with my colleagues from CFHI. I'll have my colleague Mariah introduce herself quickly.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Mariah, CFHI's program coordinator. So I'll be presenting a little bit about CFHI and also helping you through our application process. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Mariah. And we have some additional guests that will introduce themselves a little bit later, but we have our on-site coordinators from Oaxaca and La Paz that will be here, as well as some student returnees that went on our Oaxaca program this past year to talk a little bit about their experience. So today's presentation, we're going to go over just quickly the program as a whole, eligibility, the placement process and timeline. Then we'll move over to discuss CFHI and kind of their focus in terms of global health education. Then we will move forward to discussing La Paz and Oaxaca as destinations for your global internship program, program costs and funding, as well as a student panel. And at the very end, we will have some Q&A. So thank you for joining us, and we will get started. So the Global Health Program. So we've been running this program for a few different years, and we're so excited to be having another application cycle for La Paz and Oaxaca. So the program occurs during the summer. It includes 8 weeks of on-site observational clinical rotations that will occur June 20th through August 15th, as well as online coursework for 10 weeks. So June 22nd through August 28th. So that follows the summer session A10 calendar. These are the dates for both La Paz and Oaxaca, so no difference in terms of the dates. All students will be enrolled in a mandatory Global Health 195 CE course, which we'll talk about how that could apply to your academic requirements in a second, as well as an optional CESC 130 Intercultural Communication in the Global Workplace course. If you're interested in receiving financial aid, you must be enrolled in a total of 8 units. These observational clinical rotations are academic, so non-paid, and you will have approximately 32 hours per week of what we call internship activities. So that would include both your observation and clinical rotations. You will have weekly lectures from the medical director in your program site, possibly some case studies as well. There are additionally 2 days per week, some non-credit bearing Spanish coursework. So this is really just to enhance your Spanish speaking skills, specifically if you're a more intermediate learner. If you are someone who maybe is already quite fluent in Spanish, really focusing on that medical Spanish vocabulary. So all of these together, approximately 32 hours per week of activities. So again, this is the global health track, and we'll go a little bit further in depth with each of our on-site partners on kind of the rotation sectors that you might see in their particular location, but you'll see some of those that are highlighted are hospital medicine, child health, indigenous health, maternal and reproductive health, pediatrics, primary care, and public health. So the locations are a little bit different in terms of their focus, but there is some overlap as well, and we'll discuss that in a few slides here. Now, the coursework that you're enrolled in, the mandatory Global Health 195 CE course, depending on your major, will count for different electives, elective credit. So education majors fulfills the community engagement requirement. Global health minors will be electives for the minor. Human biology and society majors fulfills the internship research requirement. It is by a petition process. And public health majors will receive upper division units, as well as you can petition it for your community engagement requirement. If you're outside of those majors or minors, you're free to petition with your department directly, but we don't currently have an arrangement at this moment. And then the education majors doing the program, you can also use the optional course to fulfill an education major elective, that CESC 130 course. In terms of eligibility for the program, it is open technically to all UCLA majors and minors. If you are an education student wanting to submit this experience for your education community engagement requirement. You must complete the Education 180 course prior to going. It's offered every term. If you're not an education major, you don't need to complete the course. You must have intermediate level of Spanish skills. We don't check your Spanish level in terms of like a test or verifying your coursework. However, we'll talk in a second about the application interview, which is the second step of the process, and that is where you will actually be tested verbally on your conversational skills. You must have a GPA of a 3.0 minimum, 90 units completed by spring 2026 in good academic standing. If you're a first year or transfer student, we will do a grade check in winter term to verify that you have a 3.0 GPA then, as we know you don't have a GPA at UCLA at time of application, so that's okay. And 90 unit minimum, we do count AP and transfer units. So as long as you can get 90 units by the end of spring term, you would be eligible. So in other words, you should have approximately 45 units going into this fall term already. All right, so the placement process and timeline. So unlike our other programs, you're not being placed at an internship site, but you are doing observational clinical rotations. And so what you'll be doing for this application is you'll be first submitting a biographical application, quite simple, quite straightforward. You'll also be submitting a statement of purpose and a resume. So resume, up to date in terms of any relevant skills or experiences. Statement of purpose, you'll go into depth about why you want to do the program, your career goals, anything that makes you stand out as a particular candidate. After you submit these documents to us, you will then, on a rolling basis, do an application interview with CFHI. So CFHI, you'll schedule with them directly. We'll send you a follow-up email with a calendar link, and that interview will be done part in English, part in Spanish, to kind of test your Spanish speaking skills. And that interview will be just a way to get to know you as a candidate, expand on your statement of purpose. Why does this program work into your academic and career goals? Why, why did you select this particular location? What makes you interested in going there? What are you hoping to get out of this experience? And so you'll complete that interview on a rolling basis, and then we will let you know if you have been accepted into the program in mid-January. The application is currently available right now, so you're able to apply between now and November 24th. There's no advantage in terms of being accepted by applying earlier. However, if you do apply earlier, you can complete the second step, the application interview, at any time. And so the great part of that is that if you're applying on November 24th, which 70% of students tend to do, that means that your application interview might occur during December, 10th week, finals week, or your holidays. So I always encourage students to apply early because that way you're not worried about finals while you're doing the application interview. All right. So as I mentioned, we work on site with our program partner, Child Family Health International, or CFHI. And so I'm going to pass it along to Mariah to discuss a little bit more of who CFHI is.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm going to keep this as brief as possible, but we feel like it's really important just to tell you a little bit about CFHI before we talk about the program specifics, because CFHI is the hosting organization, right? So just a super brief overview. CFHI is a nonprofit organization, and while we offer our ethical, fair trade, and immersive global health education programs, um, our programs, what's important to note about them is they're really built off of a foundation of local leadership, community-based and asset-based engagement. But essentially, in a nutshell, this internship is an opportunity for you to travel abroad, immerse yourself in a new culture and a new environment. You're getting to learn specifically about how health is implemented, different types of healthcare, different healthcare systems in another country. And a lot of your program activities are going to be observational rotations with hospitals, primary care clinics, NGOs, and really getting to learn from local healthcare professionals, while of course immersing yourself in another culture. I always like to just bring to light CFHI's tagline, just because I feel like it really sets the scene for this experience for you and what it's going to mean to you. Let the world change you reminds us that global health is not about fixing or saving or implementing underlying assumptions. It's really more about listening and learning and just being a sponge of the world and the beautiful things that the world has to teach us. So this is part of CFHI's mission. We have been offering programs for over 33 years now. We currently have programs in 10 different countries, but of course you have two of our beautiful, amazing, most popular sites available to you. And over the last 30 plus years, we've had over 16,000 students in our programs. So we're very experienced with working with students. We can go to the next slide. What sets CFHI apart, maybe from other organizations you've heard of or been a part of? There's a few different things which you can read about here, but the most important thing I want to highlight is that we really prioritize preserving the authenticity of the local community's expertise. All of our programs and the activities that you're doing are nested in gold standard educational and ethical best practices. So we really try to challenge the traditional colonial mindset and approach to global health and strive for very thoughtful and reflective engagement among our participants. Um, so what does this mean for CFHI's approach? One thing that's important to know is you're never going to be in a position where you're treating or diagnosing patients. This is just because ethical considerations are really fundamental in guiding our efforts towards programs that are just, respectful, and sustainable. We also, of course, want to avoid, the underlying assumptions of having quick fixes to global health. We never want to send you abroad to, unintentionally disrupt local healthcare structures and systems. We're never want to reinforce like that savior narrative that has been common in the past in global health. And of course, we never want you to engage in medical procedures that are beyond your level of training or that ensue different power dynamics or that put you or patients in jeopardized situations for your safety. So in our approach, we really emphasize the existing health systems and resources that are within the local community you're visiting. Of course, the individuals you're joining on the ground, the local practitioners are held as the experts of their own environments, and they're really responsible for owning that narrative of your program. This approach is allowing for a very authentic and balanced understanding of everything you're experiencing in the health settings, in the cultural settings, and you're, going to be developing and gaining all these tools and all these beautiful things that the world is going to be teaching you when you're abroad that you can bring back with you to the United States. And, it's going to tie into your personal development, your professional development, especially, if you're pre-health, pre-med, pre-nursing, maybe you're going to go on to get your master's of public health, whatever it may be. This is really helping you lay that foundation for, what it means to be a global citizen of the world and a culturally competent health professional in the future. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so really quickly in your program, we want you to try to challenge underlying assumptions and embrace these new experiences, environments, and different perspectives. This might mean shifting from being certain about how things happen in the world to embracing more of a curious mindset and embracing the role of a learner. This might look like not taking a deficit-oriented approach or lens, but rather viewing the experience through a lens that recognizes differences and strengths of different communities in the world. This might look like not oversimplifying global health challenges, but instead really wanting to dive deep into them and critically think and analyze the complexity of different issues. And of course, we encourage you to approach all experiences with humility, admiration, being open to really allow this to be a meaningful learning experience for you. So next slide. What to expect across either internship, whether you're going to La Paz or Oaxaca. Once you're accepted by UCLA, you will be asked to complete the online CFHI application and forms. Pretty much everything you do for CFHI pre-departure is designed to really help us help you have a positive experience. So there's going to be some forms on there, things like your preferences for lodging or health placement preferences. Maybe you have some dietary restrictions or allergies we need to be aware of. Those are the examples of forms, again, that are designed to help us help you. You'll also do a series of asynchronous pre-departure training modules. These will talk about many things from program logistics to health and safety to what to pack to who's picking you up at the airport. And then after your pre-departure process, you'll of course prepare to arrive on site, at which you'll arrive on the start date. The local team will arrange your airport pickup on that Saturday, and then on Sunday you have an on-site orientation. Across both programs, you can expect lodging, which are going to be homestay families, and then 2 meals per day made for you by your homestay family are going to be provided in the program. You can expect Monday through Thursday, you'll have probably around 6 hours a day of health-focused activities, which might include, shadowing, rotations, and things like that. You'll have a weekly health lecture from the local medical director, and you'll also be taking language classes in the afternoons. And lastly, you're backed by a whole lot of infrastructure for health and safety supported by CFHI. And this is just a super sample schedule of what your day in the life is going to look like in either program. But essentially, you'll wake up, you'll start your day with breakfast at the homestay family. In the mornings, you'll have your health activities or rotations. Those are 4 days a week, and then you get a 3-day weekend to kind of enjoy your free time, work on anything you need to work on, explore the culture, and things like that. Um, Midday, you'll have lunch at your homestay family, and then most afternoons, you'll have some language classes. Again, you're having a weekly lecture with the medical director, and then you also have many different cultural activities and immersion while you're abroad. Okay, go to the next slide. All right, so in terms of the infrastructure of the team on the ground when you go abroad, there's going to be a local medical director who oversees all of your clinical rotations. The preceptors are the individuals who you're getting to actually shadow in the rotations. And then importantly, we have our local coordinators who are the cultural experts. They are responsible for overseeing your homestay family. They're a great resource for support and advice if you want ideas of cultural activities to do, need suggestions for tour companies and things like that. And we can go to the next slide. We have our local coordinator from La Paz, Bolivia, Gonzalo Claure here, as well as our local coordinator from Oaxaca here, Doctora Marta. So I will hand it over to Gonzalo, and then after that, we'll head over to Doctora Marta to talk just a little bit more about program logistics. Thank you, Gonzalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mariah. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I am the local coordinator in the city of La Paz. I am in charge of the program here. La Paz is located in the heart of South America. We are up, La Paz is located in the Andes at 3,500 meters above sea level. It's pretty high. We have a very large proportion of indigenous people, and it's the largest in Latin America, actually, together with Guatemala, I think, and Panama, Mexico. But we have a lot of indigenous population here. And the city itself, the city of La Paz, is an Aymara side. So as much as you're going to see, like the Western city and Western style city and everything else, we are surrounded by Aymara speaking communities that have integrated completely with all the rest of us. So we're, very diverse, very interesting country. Indigenous populations, Quechuas and Aymaras plus other ethnicities make around 55% of the population in Bolivia. We speak a lot of different languages, although Spanish is the main language that we use. That's the common ground for everybody. Everybody speaks Spanish, and then a lot of people speak other languages. In a lot of places, a lot of times, students are confused about where the capital of Bolivia is. La Paz is not the capital of Bolivia. La Paz is the administrative site of the country. This is where the president and the Congress reside, but the capital is Sucre. If you have the chance to go to Sucre while you're here, you should go. It's a beautiful city, very nice, very warm, beautiful place to visit. So we encourage the students to go there and visit during one of the weekends they have. Great. When you're accepted, I'm going to get a list of the students that are accepted in the program, and then we're going to have 2 phone calls, 2 conferences, one giving you an overview of the program, and the second one is going to be an orientation to the visa application process. Although we are expecting the visa process and the visa requirement to be lifted very soon. So that'll be good news. That'll be probably the case for next year. We're still looking into that, but this is going to be something that is not going to last very long. But anyway, just in case, it's still in place by the time you come, then we're going to have also a second conference called Just to discuss the visa application process, which is really simple. I'll give you all the information you need. Next one, please. The focus of our clinical programs here are basically public health that you can do at NGO. Some students have chosen to do work to visit and to get immersed and in contact with NGOs here in the city of La Paz. That is a possibility. We also work with you also visit and you also interact with staff at primary healthcare places. Then you have also you're exposed also to hospital medicine, and that's where you visit two main hospitals. One is the Children's Hospital, Hospital del Niño, and then you visit another hospital that is around the corner. It's called Hospital de la Mujer. That's a women's hospital. They are really close to each other. They are right in front of the area where we are going to be staying. Other areas of importance for our program are maternal and reproductive health that you are going to see a lot of while you're visiting Hospital de la Mujer. Then pediatrics, of course, at Hospital del Niño, and child health in primary health, first level health clinics. That's basically an overlook, very quick overlook of an overview of our program in the city of La Paz. And well, I look forward to seeing a lot of you here with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gonzalo. Let's hand it over to Marta now from Oaxaca. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marta Canseco, one of the local coordinators here in the beautiful city of Oaxaca. Oaxaca is one of the cities located in the really south part of Mexico. We are very well known in Mexico and very popular for our traditions and customs that we have. In Mexico, we have about 65 different indigenous groups. In the whole country, we have 32 states, and 16 of them are in Oaxaca. So that's why we're very rich in traditions. Each group has their own traditions, their own costumes, their own language, and everything is their own festivities. So it makes us very rich in culturally talking and traditions. The main groups are the Zapotec and the Mixtec. And we also, besides the Spanish, we also teach Zapotec in our school. So for someone who already knows a lot of Spanish, they can also learn an indigenous language in our school. Well, besides the Spanish and also the medical Spanish. And you don't need a visa to come to our state. And Oaxaca, there is always something going on. Like today, if you hear some noise, are the fireworks that we're having a big festivity for a saint in the city. And also we're very activist and we're having demonstrations also on the other side of the city. So it's like kind of crazy today. But when you come to Oaxaca in this program, you are very lucky because you come in July, when there is a big festivity, the most important festivity that we have in Oaxaca, that is called Guelaguetza. And this festival is when we feel in Oaxaca very proud of having this indigenous roots in our blood. And you will see a representation from all the different regions of these groups in Oaxaca. We are divided in 8 different regions. And each one will come to the city and will show or make a presentation like a dance, or maybe they will represent a wedding or a funeral. And that is really something that not all of the students have the opportunity to see this real festival. And you will have, when you are here, you will have that opportunity. Besides that, every day there is something going on. So you will see people dancing on the streets. You will see weddings happening in this church that we have here in Oaxaca, that is the most beautiful one, that is called Santo Domingo Church. So every weekend, if you pass by the church, you will see people dancing, and we have these big parades that we call calendas in Oaxaca, with fireworks, with people, with our traditional costumes, and they are really so beautiful. There are no words really to describe this. You have to come and see it. Next one. And also, well, for your clinical rotations, mostly you will do it in primary health centers that we call centros de salud. And there are some of them are in downtown, most of them are a little bit further. So you will need to take a transportation to go there. Usually students take a taxi and share, the cost of the taxi. And these are called centros de salud. And you usually go there, as Andrew already said, 4 hours a day. Usually you go from 9 to 1 in the morning. And there is a time when you go to a medicine hospital, like the main and only really public hospital that we have in Oaxaca, that is known as Hospital Civil. And that's a very, very interesting place where you will have the opportunity to observe some surgeries or many surgeries. It depends how lucky you are on doing that. And also you will visit private hospitals, 2 or 3 hospitals in Oaxaca, and a rehabilitation center. That is a very beautiful place that is so nice, clean, and you will see so many children and family there, and they are very well treated in this center. It's very famous in Mexico, and these centers, there is one in each state of Mexico. So they are they do really big things for the families and children, and at almost no cost at all. So it's a very nice place to be there.
Thank
And
you.
just one more
Uh,
thing. Sorry. And besides then all these things, you also will be introduced to the traditional medicine, and you will have at least 4 lectures about this. And you will even learn how to make how the healers in Oaxaca made their own medicine using the herbs. You will learn about the names and uses of the different herbs in Oaxaca, and that's something that is also very, very interesting to see and to learn. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you, Gonzalo. We'll talk about health and safety in just a second here. I'm actually gonna skip over to our student panel because I know one of our students will have to leave quickly to class. So I want to introduce both Caleb and Emily, and I want to actually start with Caleb, just since I know you have a limited amount of time, and then we'll go over to you, Emily. But Caleb, if you could introduce yourself real quickly and mention maybe what your favorite rotation was while in Oaxaca.
Yeah, hi, my name is Caleb, and I'm a fourth year human biology and society major. So, as Andrew mentioned, I went to Oaxaca this past summer. One of my favorite rotations was definitely when we went to one of the local like ambulatory clinics, and I saw um, quite a few surgeries that day, maybe like 3 surgeries. I went to the urology department, the ophthalmology department, and then we saw 2 within like the urology department. So that was like a full day of surgeries. And since I'm interested in going into surgery in the future, it was just really cool to see.
And doing those observational clinical rotations, what would you say are, transferable skills that you took away from the experience? Obviously, you're not practicing medicine, but you're observing a lot. So what are things that you feel like you learned that you wouldn't have maybe gotten, on a different program from this experience?
I think you just get to be exposed to every single step of the way, like um, even before like what goes into planning these different appointments. Like the doctors will walk you through like the process, and will even go over like the pre-surgical records of the patient, so that you get to expose to see what they're even looking for, how they plan for the surgery, and then even into scrubbing in and putting it on the actual just the actual attire that you need to basically be in the operating room, down to like you'll be right next to the surgeon as he or she like shows you like whatever they're working on, and you just get to see like the anesthesia, and you get to see the patient go down under. And then the entire breadth of the operation to also post-op, and you get to even talk to the patient a little bit after, and so you just get a really like as close of a hands-on interaction as you can be without actually practicing. And so you just learn so much, and skills in terms of communicating with the patient, skills in terms of learning how the doctors manage their schedules and how they manage the patient, both clinically and just in terms of their schedule. So just a really, just a very overarching and very comprehensive experience.
Excellent. I know you have to go in 1 minute, so
Yeah.
just want to ask, is there any last advice for a student who's currently watching this presentation that you would give to your peers about the program?
Yeah, so I guess my biggest piece of advice, as someone that isn't of Latino heritage, I definitely had like a good amount of Spanish knowledge, as Elizabeth asked in the chat. But you learn so much, and there's so much room for growth. And there's classes. That's why we take them each week to be able to improve. And just the living with like the host family, just and being immersing yourself. Like going to restaurants, asking for food, and asking how much something is, um, and practicing with like your peers. It really just, even as someone that isn't as accustomed to the culture, like I was able to learn so much through both our rotations and just in daily life. Like when it comes to walking to the bus stop and interacting and asking the bus driver how far it is to get to somewhere, you really just get like the daily life, and you get the daily knowledge that takes to live in another culture. And I think that's something that definitely we'll never forget. I think learning and living in another culture is something that you carry with yourself for a long time, and into whatever career you have. Like the different cultural experiences will definitely inform how you interact with people of not just Latino culture, but any other culture. You learn the skills to see outside like your own lens and outside of this perspective that you have growing up in America. So that would probably be my greatest takeaway.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Caleb. I appreciate your time. I'll show everyone on the next slide after we speak with Emily how you can connect with Caleb and Emily moving forward if you have any future questions. But thanks as well for sharing a little bit about your experience, Caleb. And now we'll move on to talk with Emily. So Emily, maybe you could also mention, your major, what your maybe career goals are, and why you signed up for the program, and what was your favorite rotation as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Joy. I'm a fourth year psychobio major with a minor in global health. I have a friend that did the La Paz program the year before me, and so I was really interested in like what she did. She told me about just like the approach to global health that this program had, the amazing shadowing, without it turning into something that crossed a line and was into saviorism, and actually like you learned something really amazing from your time there. And as for like transferable skills that I think that I learned over there, I recently got to like highlight this in an interview, but I think that I really learned like adaptability. Each week, like you're going to different clinics and you have to push yourself out there to talk to doctors, feel comfortable to ask your questions. And so I feel like I really got really great at like, communicating and learning new things and being able to ask that. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Emily. And I know that you had a specific project where you actually were highlighting your homestay. And I remember in your
Yes.
testimonials, you said that homestays were one of the things you were most nervous about, but one of the most rewarding in the end. And so I thought maybe you could discuss a little bit about your experience with your homestay family.
Yes. That was definitely something that I was nervous about, and I'm sure that you guys probably have several questions about that as well. I'd never stayed with like a different family before, and so that's certainly different than being like in a dorm or in an apartment. Um, it was overall just like a really, really great experience. So we stayed with a family of four. They were extremely welcoming. They made 2 meals a day for us. And they were really great at being involved, asking us questions on how the clinics were, if we needed any like directional help and everything. So that was just a really amazing program. You also aren't paired in a homestay family alone. So I was paired with three other students from UCLA, and I had one roommate. And that was just really, really great because we also like we got to talk and become very close. And we had that like support from a homestay family that helped a lot with the cultural immersion.
Excellent. Great to hear. And one question I know Caleb kind of mentioned a little bit when as he was ending kind of his advice for students, but he talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
Spanish and improving Spanish skills. And so I don't know what level
Yeah.
you were when you started in terms of your Spanish speaking skills, but how did those improve while you were there, whether it was more conversational or whether it was medical Spanish? What would you say for a student who maybe is, concerned, even thinking of your
Yeah.
colleagues that were with you?
Yes. So Spanish was my first language, but obviously in school, like I speak way more English. So it was great to just be able to like speak it much more. I got to learn much more medical terminology, and I'm not Mexican, so I got to learn more like Mexican Spanish and slang, as well as like being able to take the Spanish classes. I hadn't been taught like Spanish grammar in school because my parents taught me at home. So I got to learn like extra like skills that I didn't have before. So that was just really great. And in my interview, that was another thing that I was nervous about. And I made sure to ask my interviewer just what could I do to improve like even before I left, and what could I do while I was there to really gain some like Spanish knowledge.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Emily. And that's a great point because I think we have students that come in at different Spanish speaking levels. And so some
Hmm.
students are, just at the intermediate level and nervous about conversation, and some
Yes.
students that have great conversation, but they're either learning, more the local slang, they're learning more the medical
Yes.
Spanish. And even as we were mentioning, there's a lot of other language outside of Spanish that are spoken in both
Hmm.
Oaxaca and La Paz. And so hearing how those all intermix in, the local setting, is important. So,
Yeah, and if I could emphasize one
mhm.
thing, just because Caleb is my friend, so I saw his Spanish like greatly improve. You do get like so many opportunities to practice. Just like I always said, like in little like restaurants and stuff, your guys' skills will definitely you'll see yourself like change a lot. But yeah, thank you.
Thank, thank you, Emily. So we're going to move on with the presentation, but we'll bring Emily back on at the end for any Q&A that you all have before we head out today. And I wanted to mention that Emily, as well as some other of the GIP ambassadors, are available to contact directly. So you can actually find them on our website. There's the QR code there. For this year, we specifically have some ambassadors for Oaxaca. We unfortunately don't have a student ambassador for La Paz. However, I wanted to mention, even as Emily had mentioned, one of her friends, went to La Paz, she decided to go to Oaxaca, but the experiences obviously will be unique in the cultural setting, but there is a lot of similarities in terms of the setup of how the programs are run. And so I think you can, even if you're thinking of the La Paz program, can gain a lot of knowledge just based on the Oaxaca students' experiences. We can also try to find, if you really want to speak to a student that went to Oaxaca, see if any of our students who went are open to having conversations about their experience with you as well. So without further ado, I do want to jump back a couple slides here just to allow Mariah to talk a little bit about the health and safety on site, and then we'll end with the finances and then Q&A.
Yeah, I'll keep this super brief because you can read this. I also put our website. But basically this slide is to show you that not only does CFHI but also UCLA, we have a lot of different areas of support and layers of support that go into making sure you're safe during your program, that you're going to a safe site. For example, we also enroll you in like emergency medical and evacuation insurance. We have a dedicated person who's overseeing health and safety at all times as well. There's 24/7 on the ground support as well as an emergency line. So there's a whole bunch of things you can read about on here. I'll also put the link in the chat. But this is just so you know, if you have questions about safety, if your parents have questions, which I know can be common, feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to share with you some of the things that are in place.
Thank you, Mariah. And just before we go to Q&A, just want to talk about the program cost and funding. So on the program website, you'll see that we do have the costs listed. Both programs will have a what we call the program fee, the build cost. So that's what's placed onto your Bruin bill account. If you click the little I button, so you'll see on the program website under the cost and funding tab, there's the budget. The little I button next to the program fee says what's included. So like your tuition, your homestay accommodations, your 2 meals per day, obviously the setup of the clinical rotations, airport pickup and drop off. So you can look more into what's included. The non-billable expenses are really just estimates of what you might spend while you're there. It really depends on kind of, your own spending habits and what you plan to do, as well as just the cost at the time of airfare. So you may spend $1,200 versus $1,600. We tend to be a little bit a little bit conservative in those estimates to make sure you have enough funding to prepare yourself. So you can look at this information specifically on the program websites. We're just posting it here. Both program fees are very similar in terms of costs. And then while you're considering going, we want to really emphasize that you can use financial aid for these programs. So financial aid does travel with you. The summer is the start of the next academic term. So you would be applying for the 26-27 FAFSA or DREAM Act application and submitting that by the deadline, which I think is March 1st or 2nd, usually of the spring. And then you must be enrolled in 8 units to receive financial aid eligibility. There is no Cal Grant in the summer, so it tends to be a more loan-heavy financial aid package than maybe during the academic year. So we always encourage students to apply for scholarships. So we have various scholarships that are available for you to apply to directly. So definitely look at our website and apply. You'll notice on each of the La Paz and Oaxaca web pages under our finance cost and funding tab, you'll see a scholarships link, and you can look at the scholarships. All the scholarships are available to apply to after the 24th deadline. So you actually have, you can apply to the program first, and then we will send out all the scholarship information. Most open up in December or January. One national scholarship, the Gilman International Scholarship, is for Pell Grant recipients, and students receive between $3,000 and $5,000. And that's a really great opportunity because I would say our GIP students are amazing, and about 30 to 40% who have applied for that have probably received it in the past, which is a really great rate. So that said, just want to note that our students do a lot of fun things even outside of the internship sites. So these are a couple photos from our La Paz and Oaxaca programs in the past. And we just really hope that you plan to join us this upcoming summer, whether it's in La Paz or whether it's in Oaxaca. And with that said, I do want to stop the recording, but open it up for any student questions.